Hi.
Happy Wednesday and good afternoon, everyone else, and welcome back to Plain Speak, the podcast where we bridge the gap between technology and customer support, bringing insights directly from the leaders shaping the future of customer experience. Today, I am super thrilled to have Jen Schmitt join the show. Aside from being friends from middle school, Jen is also the Senior Director of Operations and Customer Care at Rhythm Energy, a company making renewable energy more accessible and reliable, particularly in Texas. With over a decade of experience in pricing strategy, portfolio management, and energy operations, Jen is an expert in both the operational and customer care aspects of the energy sector. Super excited to dive into her journey and Rhythm's role in leading the renewable energy transition. I'm your host, Liz Tai, CEO and founder of High Operator. At High Operator, we're committed to revolutionizing customer support through AI-powered solutions like High Auto and our AI-native customer support management tools like HiQ. Please feel free to engage with us during this LinkedIn Live through the chat. We welcome your questions. We'll try and address them during the conversations if we can get to them, or we'll follow up on LinkedIn afterwards. So with that, super excited to dive into today's conversation with Jen. Jen, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's excited to chat about some of this. Now, I'm a Rhythm Energy customer, but for those of us joining us, I know we have a lot of folks coming from e-commerce and marketplace. Tell us a little bit about what Rhythm Energy is.
Yeah, Rhythm is a renewable energy provider. We're based in Houston, and we focus on clean, affordable, and reliable energy for residential and commercial customers. We were founded in 2021. And well, we entered market in 2021. We actually founded during COVID, which was pretty fun. And Rhythm leverages our Texas's really substantial wind and solar energy to support the energy transition. And we're really focused on finding that next technology solution that allows customers to engage with their electricity usage. We provide fixed rate electricity contracts, and those protect customers from fluctuating market prices. We're on the cutting edge of time of use customer contracts, which is really exciting to have people really engage with when they use power. Our mission is to make renewable energy accessible and understandable. And so that's really where I focus most of my time is in customer education and proactive outreach.
Love it. So for the consumer in Texas, you really are that point of sale, right? You are the folks that people buy energy from to power their homes, but there's a lot of complex stuff which we'll get into behind the scenes to actually make it all work.
Right. So what's really cool about the energy market in Texas and in several places across the US and the globe is that there is a retail component. And so that's where you can really bring branding to what is otherwise a very utility monopolistic solution. And so that means that customers can actually have a say in what provider they choose, which means they can also say with their feet if that provider is not meeting their needs. It also means that we have an opportunity to bring customers to the table on energy transition and really explain to them what going green can look like.
Fascinating. Must be a really unique challenge, which I'm excited for us to dive into more in a little bit here. But before we get into all of that, Jen, tell us a little bit about your path to building this career in energy operations and customer care. How did you get into this and how did you end up at Rhythm Energy?
Yeah, so I started in pricing and portfolio management in electricity and gas markets right out of school. I was like the weird kid who wanted to be a petroleum accountant at like age 8. And so I graduated in accounting and geology, which is obvious in where I've then taken my career. I really got exposed to renewables in college, and I think that creating a sustainable grid helps us really drive forward a better planet while also getting to tackle some really unique product challenges. So I'm excited to be working on the reshaping of the energy industry, and Rhythm Energy, because we're focused on the transition, really gives us an opportunity to be part of that. The other thing that's really cool, and the reason I moved from portfolio management into operations and customer experience is like getting close to the customer and what the customer wants and needs and developing products that serve that need is the most important part of the energy transition in my mind. Because if we can't hit that sweet spot between affordability and uh, basically value for the
Mhm.
customer, then we don't have buy-in. And if we don't have buy-in, then what's the point, right? And
Yeah.
so I really want to bring all of our customers along on the energy transition journey. And so that's where my passion for educating and supporting customers through this process is really met in my role at Rhythm.
I love that unique journey because you understand the portfolio management, you understand sort of the nuts and bolts of how it all works, and you really transitioned also into the delivery and the communication, which is really interesting and a really sort of deep vertical understanding that I think is really unique and really cool. Because to sort of circle back to maybe customer care philosophies here, right? You touched on this a little bit earlier, but rhythm is in is a utility, right? And I think, I mean, even myself included, we don't necessarily have the best relationship with our utility providers, right? Like it is a bad thing if I hear from my gas company generally, right? Like if I hear from my water company, something might have gone wrong. But
Yeah.
rhythm, my experience has been very, very different from a customer care philosophy perspective. Tell me a little bit about that. How is the customer care philosophy at Rhythm Energy different from that at a traditional retail energy company?
Yeah, I think that's really true. Traditional utilities focus on no news is good news. And we've really kind of flipped that script. We think that proactive, transparent communication gives the customer really the grounding and um, understanding to be able to engage with both their contract with us and their electricity supply as a whole more fully. And we
Yeah.
think that's really required in a subscription-based billing service where like the alternative is you just get a bill from us every month, and a bill is not usually a really exciting
Uh,
customer interaction. No one wants to open their pocketbook.
Especially
Um,
summers in Texas.
exactly. And so being able to be like, we think your bill is going to probably look like this based on how you're trending. We have these products where if you can run your washing machine overnight instead of at like 4 p.m. when you get home or 5 p.m. when you get home, that can save you money. And so, like, really providing opportunities to engage with the customer on when they're using their power is like a really fun way for us to have more consistent communication. So it's not just a bill. And also, if someone's trending higher, right, they have an HVAC system that's on the fritz, we're
Mhm.
sending communications that say like, hey, like something's happening. This is like 30% higher than last year. What's going on? To try and have that conversation. And then as we get further into the energy transition and connected devices and different levels of green, like we've now got the conversation going to be able to educate on all of those other opportunities for the customers to engage with us too. So we really think that having a customer care team that's trained to anticipate customer needs and respond
Yep.
quickly with clear and accurate information is the foundation for how Rhythm wants to interact with our customers.
Very cool, because you're laying all that groundwork for the customers. You're training the consumer to get used to that communication because, as you said, that's really interesting looking forward with more connected devices as we move along this energy transition that you've hinted at a couple times. Okay, so energy transition. Let's talk a little bit about that, right? Because as a casual consumer, do I want to be more green? Yeah, sure, totally. Why not? Do I want to pay double for that? Absolutely not, right? Um, which I think brings in another layer, right? So you mentioned sort of Rhythm Energy is a subscription service. And so you have the sort of subscription challenges and metrics and KPIs to meet. But you're also very, from a branding perspective, differentiated as a green energy provider. What are some of the challenges or opportunities maybe to think about either capturing that customer upfront and then communicating those things out to the consumer? Right? How do you
Yeah, I think interacting with like empathy and personalization in every interaction is probably like the core. And from that, we've learned some really important aspects of how we promote the energy transition in a mass market setting. And so some of that is explaining the variability in wind and solar output to customers and really engaging with them on, like when the wind is blowing and the sun is shining, we can get to negative power prices.
Yeah.
When they're not, we're talking about potentially thousands of dollars in power prices. And our fixed rate contracts protect consumers from those prices. But from a greening the grid perspective, if we increase our consumption during substantial renewable times and decrease our consumption during fossil fuel times, well, we're getting to a lower emission grid without using less power necessarily, right? It's all about time of day. And so that's why we have our time of use products. And hopefully, that sentence also explains like balancing the technical we call intermittency with what it means for a customer. Like, here's how you can actually engage in greening the grid is really important. And so we have ongoing education initiatives to bridge the gap between sort of the technical side of how the power markets and the energy transition and renewable energy and emerging technologies work and how we meet the customer where they are and really get to the root of affordability and sustainability in a residential energy contract.
Definitely. Now, that actually touches on something really interesting because utilities are kind of universal, right? Like every single human needs access to utilities in some way, but there are probably very different customer groups within that with different needs, different financial pressures, different, things that they're running. Given that Rhythm Energy has both the subscription-based service dynamics and your utility dynamics, what are the key metrics that you think about to measure success in customer care? How do they impact your approach? How do you think about segmenting those different user groups?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we focus on a lot of the common metrics that float around the customer experience space, right? Your CSAT, your contact rate, your handle time, first contact resolution. But for us, to your point about segmentation, it is so important to really divide those populations and understand why someone is taking longer on the phone in a particular situation. For example, if I have a client who's just installed solar on their roof and it's not producing the amount of power or like rate impact that was originally put in the quote before they paid for the panels, that's like a fundamental break in customer experience. And while we didn't sell the panels, I do want to meet what they can do to control the situation as it stands, whether they're on the best plan for what their panels are producing. That's the most important part. And so it's digging really deep down past the average to segment out these different customer populations and really see why they're communicating the way they are. We're an essential service. Bills can get pretty high. So meeting the customer on affordability, meeting the customer on sustainability is crucial. And you can't meet an individual customer if you treat them all with the same peanut butter approach.
That is really interesting. And I think kind of highlights one of the big challenges in your industry that we talked a little bit about, which is you are the point of sale to the consumer, right? When the power goes out, they know that they pay Rhythm every month for power. But you don't necessarily control all the infrastructure behind it. And there are these other inputs like solar or whatever they've decided to do that have nothing to do with Rhythm, but yet is going to impact the thing they get every month, which is their bill from Rhythm, right? How do you think about that and effective communication around when things either go really right, I don't know, solar is great, or really wrong because you said you guys went to market in 2021, which was not a good year for Texas utilities. How do you bridge that gap?
Yeah. It's a real challenge. Some days are harder than other days. Educating customers on the changing face of energy is so important because we're moving at lightning speed, right? Like this is an industry that hadn't made substantial steps forward since Edison, and in the last like 15 years, we were like, okay, off to the races. let's do this thing.
Yep.
Distributed grid, storage, so much intermittent resources. Let's just figure it out. And some of that is so exciting, right? I sit on a couple of
Mhm.
ERCOT committees and getting to like talk about all the exciting ways that we can engage with grid. ERCOT is the system operator for Texas. And
Mm.
so having those conversations with customers in a clear but flexible way to say like what is true today may not be true tomorrow is so important because then as the market shifts, customers don't feel unbalanced, right? They've been reassured that this is a path. This is somewhat understood, although very much in flux. And here are the aspects of it that we can control and we can partner with them to control, right? And so we continuously retrain our customer care team on the new products, services, challenges, things that are coming out of the grid, right? So as the value of solar has changed with more solar on the grid, right? You increase the supply, the price goes down. Okay, so then we have to talk to the customer about these panels you bought 5 years ago had a value 5 years ago, and they don't have
Yep.
that value today. And how do we bridge you into this new moment? Um, so really focusing on sort of the long-term customer trust through transparency, even when we're communicating something that's not as good, but really building trust in honesty is really important. And then I think also being proactive when there's a positive message, right? This isn't a no news is good news. This is a good news is good news. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about why it's good news now, whether that's sustained good news or like a moment in time. Like those are the conversations I want to have with customers because with things in flux, there's moments that are going to feel really good and moments that are going to feel really challenging. And
Yep.
what we as a retailer provide is if this is the bad and this is the good, we're going to meet you somewhere in this band. But that still means that the customer is in a band, right? And so
Yep.
whether we're on the downside or the upside, I want to be setting customer expectations where the customer is supported and knowledgeable about what's happening throughout.
Absolutely. Which is a lot to keep in front of the consumer because, it just hits them in their pocketbook, right? Like people want predictability. It's probably a difficult conversation to have. But that speaks to something that you just mentioned here, which is continuous training for your care team. I know we're going, I'm curious though, do you have any, 'cause I know, and we'll talk about this later, you guys have expanded via acquisition. There's been a lot of growth, as well as just a lot of changes in the market and things that have gone horribly wrong and horribly right through no right fault of rhythms at all in the broader just ecosystem.
Yeah.
Do you think about retraining your agents? Because I also my understanding is Texas utilities are also kind of different from other state utilities, and so everyone might be coming with a different experience. How have you been able to one train up your care team and then continuously keep them up to date? Any tips, tricks, strategies that you found work really?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Texas electricity feels more like a traditional retail brand where anyone can sell that product. And so customers can walk with their feet. Whereas even the markets where there is choice to provide sort of this fixed rate contract concept to help customers under like lock in Um, in Texas, there is no default utility, and
Right.
so people have to make a choice, which also means that it is very easy for them to make a different choice. And so we really try to evolve with emerging technologies. So um, we're on the kind of forefront. We have a unique product called Pick Your Due Date, which lets customers choose the date that their bill is due. Normally, there's a meter read cycle. You get whatever meter read the utility decided eons ago based on where you are when they were physically checking meters. Even though we
Yep.
now have remote meters, there are still meter read cycles. Um, and we are able to have customers, particularly customers on fixed income, be able to define the date that their electricity bill will be due to help with budgeting, right?
Yep.
Um, and so leveraging uh, in Texas, it's called Smart Meter Texas. It's where we have the individual reads over every 15 minutes, believe it or not. So, like, we're sending a bill monthly, but I can see at a 15-minute increment when our customers are using power, which means that
Really?
we can really provide new products that help customers use power when it's low carbon, right? We
Yep.
can give alerts when it's like, why did you peak to 300% your normal usage at 2 in the morning? Oh, your kid pulled out the Xbox when they were supposed to be sleeping. Got it. Um, like, and and so as we move into a world of connected devices, like having customers have access to that information. So in our My Account portal, you can drill down at all of these levels. And if you're on our time of use product, it'll actually tell you the different price at the different time of day that you were using power. And so that way, if you're like, man, I could really use an extra 30 bucks in my pocket this month, like, okay, we're going to do all the chores after 9 p.m. this month. Like, and those are the things I get most excited about because in many ways affordability and sustainability are aligned if we're
Yep.
willing to engage with our electricity usage in a way that hasn't been done before. And so, yeah, there's so much opportunity to bring renewable energy to the forefront of consciousness and really have people engage. But to do that, you have to have an expert showing you where the pieces of engagement are. Because if we're just engaging with the entire grid, to your point, there's hundreds of entities that get power from a generator, produce power at a generator, and get it to a home. And so what I love about being a retail energy provider is I can take that complexity and simplify it.
Yep.
And if I do my job well, I've both pushed for a lower carbon future and helped combat climate change. And I've also brought more affordability to my customers that we serve. And like, I mean, who's not for a good win-win?
Yeah, that's like aligning everyone's incentives because I do think it's sometimes tempting to think of renewables as a luxury. But what you're saying
Mhm.
is that no, with the correct tooling and the correct data and the correct communication around it, it actually is like a win-win for everyone.
Yeah,
Better for consumers, creates value for them, and then creates value for the grid and the environment as well. That's exciting.
super exciting.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the crisis sort of in our rolling questions. I'm saving a little bit of extra time for that. But maybe as a quick last takeaway, Jen, what do you see as the next big trend in renewable energy, particularly in a state like Texas? And what are maybe some things about renewables that people don't realize that you need to think about for sustainability?
Yeah, I love this question. So, first of all, my one tip for any residential customer is do not sign contracts at your door. Do not care who knocked on your door. Do not care if they have a really great sales pitch for solar or energy or whatever. Do not sign a
Don't do
contract at your door.
it.
Don't do it. Just don't do it. That said, if you already have solar panels, or if you are looking to get solar panels, you'll often not get a pitch that includes batteries because it increases the cost and the returns on for the person selling it. For batteries is usually not as high because the technology is more novel. And so they often don't become part of the core sales pitch. But the thing is, for a really sustainable future, getting storage with rooftop panels is the way to go. That's how we get the best benefit because it means you're not having to pay transmission and distribution charges to get the other generation to your home, right? You can store your excess solar.
Yep.
And so for me, if you are looking to go solar, if you're considering it at all, really see if you want to save and get storage with your solar, because that will really um, augment the value over time. And then the other thing I would really like us to focus is responding to intermittency on the grid. So we used to have a grid where we would just turn on fossil generators whenever we wanted them. We now
Yep.
have the opportunity to have zero carbon energy at times, but it is dependent on the wind blowing, the sun shining.
Controllable
Um,
factors.
right. And so, because we don't have control over that performance, it becomes really important to balance that with low carbon solutions. And so, a sustainable future looks like having combined cycle natural gas plants turn on really quickly to meet that peak demand at times, but it also can look like us shaving off the top of peak demand. So one of the engagements we have with our customers is to say, hey, if you don't run your normal HVAC during this really hot day, right? If you just go a few degrees beyond comfort, heck, if you want to go even more than that, you can just go somewhere else and turn your AC up really high. Um, if you do that, we can reward you because there's a market incentive for us to not buy from the grid during this time. And also, we're going to not use power during the most carbon intensive part of the day, right? And over time, that means I don't have to have as many combined cycle natural gas generators standing on standby to
Yep.
turn on during peak demand. The same is true for storage, right? Storage is a great opportunity. Submodular nuclear, great opportunity. What is true about both of those is they're expensive per kilowatt hour, right? And
Yeah.
so the less we need of those solutions, the better. And so there's this like intersection between let's have the solution, let's have the fail safe, let's not get to a winter storm Uri. It's terrifying and terrible. If we have these backups, then they turn on when there's absolutely no other solution, right? We're
Yeah.
hitting a 10-year storm, a 100-year storm, whatever it is, as climate change happens. Whether it's a 10-year storm or a 1-year storm feels sort of inconsequential because history is not an indicative of the future. We have more carbon in the atmosphere than we have in a very, very long time geologically. And
Yep.
so those storms are going to get more severe. How we respond to it, having good demand response programs, having combined cycle gas generators on backup, having storage as the technology matures, even having pumped hydro storage where the geography allows for it, right?
Yep.
Like we have so many opportunities. I really like, so offshore wind, very, very expensive, emerging technology. There are places in the US where because there's so much congestion, because it's so populated,
Huh.
offshore wind could make sense from a pricing perspective. If you had the flexibility to really want to push the grid forward, you could have a sort of super premium product that supports offshore wind in New Jersey. Um, and the folks who really care about moving us to a very low carbon future,
Yep.
they can do that. And that comes back to segmenting and understanding that intersection between affordability and sustainability. And I mean that's like the joy of this work, is really diving into the nuance and being like, okay, for this segment, this is a great solution. For this segment, this is a great solution. And really bringing people along on their green journey it's the dream, honestly.
Yeah. Super, super exciting, because I think underlying a lot of this is this increase in data that drives this ability to customize, along with the actual innovation that makes it all possible. That's fascinating. As a consumer, I'm excited to see what you hinted at as sort of the gamification of your power bill. I don't know. I'm seeing a partnership with Pokemon Go. Happy will go on and catch Pokemons when it's really high.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, Liz, when we were first founding Rhythm, I had this side project where I was having fun turning people's smart meter Texas data, which is their interval usage. I put it on a Fibonacci sequence, and then I made it play music effectively. All of the music was terrible, but it was so much fun. I was like, what if we could make like a symphony of our usage patterns?
I just feel like there's a way to like optimize the monetization. I don't know if it's like a Starbucks voucher when it's peak and people need to get out of their house.
Yeah,
Super fascinating.
no,
Um,
that's exactly like the thoughtfulness around demand response, and whether it's like that moment, like just leave the house right now, here's $5, or whether it's we'll give you back a little bit of money for the incremental effort you did, right? So you're still hanging out in your house, it's a little uncomfortable, but you did something good. Yeah,
yeah,
that gamification is so much fun, and it's why like our new demand management programs are so exciting to me because um, we're really getting to the point where that peak demand has value because we've got enough renewables on the rest of the grid.
that is so exciting. Super cool, Jen. That a lot to think about here, but we do have one last question. And this is a rolling question from our last guest, Mike Wu, the Senior Director of E-commerce and Customer Experience at Monos Luggage. And he would like to know, we've hinted at this a lot today, but what was that one moment when things fell apart with a customer? What was the issue and how did y'all fix it?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so we had gone live to market 6 weeks before Winter Storm Uri. We had a few hundred customers, nothing real. And a different supplier was set to go out of business. And so we acquired their portfolio so that their fixed rate contracts would be honored, and customers wouldn't drop to what is called provider of last resort, but basically they would have moved to an index plan. And so we wanted to protect the fixed rate contracts. I had to go to the PUC and be like, hey, we're going to grow by 47,000%. Can you please approve this deal?
47,000. Okay.
It was so scary. We did the acquisition very quickly. It was so much. But we did it and we pulled it off. And for a really long time, I had drawn a stick figure on the room I had locked myself in to figure out the operations, and it was just a stick figure of Jonah swallowing a whale instead of the other way around, because that's what that looks like. And you're controlling for all of these different potentials, right? Like, what's a commercial customer going to experience? What's a residential customer going to experience? Let me make sure that, like, now I've hedged out these customers I've acquired, right? And talking to them about your even though your supplier is gone that you had originally signed the contract with, like, your contract terms are intact, everything's good, making sure they've got the same customer experience, and then bringing them into the renewable transition, because this hadn't been a renewable energy focused company. Yeah, it was so much, but so exciting.
I feel like there are many more tales we can tell there, but we are getting a few minutes over here. And so, question for you, Jen. What would you like to ask our next guest?
Ooh, what is the funniest customer question you have come across?
Looking forward to figuring it out. Is there one that stands out for you?
Okay, I had this one where there are things called electricity vampires. It's like when you leave something plugged in.
Okay.
One of our customers had read, not at Rhythm, at a different company I worked at, had read an article about electricity vampires and also believed in vampires.
Oh
And
no.
so my poor agent got a call asking us to Ghostbuster her attic from the electricity vampire. And the poor agent was like, what do I tell?
Well, look. Totally understand why you wouldn't want an energy vampire. I love that very literal take on it. And I'm excited to see what answer Tom has for us for that in a couple weeks' time. So, Jen, thank you so much for sharing your insights and anecdotes and strategies on customer care and communicating within the renewable energy industry. As a Rhythm Energy customer myself, it's really exciting, and I'm also excited to see, how this new standard is for how energy companies can deliver excellent customer experiences while creating value props for everyone. For everyone else, thank you so much for tuning into Plain Speak during lunch today. Please do join us for our next episode at October 2nd at 12 p.m. Central, where we'll be exploring more exciting topics at the intersection of technology and customer support. See you next time. And Jen, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me, Liz. Bye.
Hey.